We have a guest in the studio today. We are going to have conversations around devolution. And this hour, we want to talk to a leader of the County Assemblies Forum. And in the next hour, we want to talk to a leader who is in the Council of Governors. In the next hour, 8 o'clock, we'll have the Governor of Mombasa, Sharif Nasir, joining us. And now we have the Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum, who is also the MCA for Ngara Ward in Nairobi City County, Chege Mwaura. Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for occupying the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Happy to.
We're going to discuss many things about devolution and the role of the county assemblies, and whether county assemblies have sufficient strength and powers to actually see devolution coming to work. Apart from impeaching governors, what else do county assemblies do? You know, we'll be discussing all these things. Mheshimiwa, from your position as MCA for Ngara Ward, this is not your first term.
No.
How many times have you been elected by the people of Ngara?
3.
This is your third term.
Yeah.
So you, from the moment devolution became devolution, you've been here.
Yeah.
You've seen it all. Is devolution on the right track?
Oh yeah. After 10 years, yes, it is on the right track. But more needs to be done, especially in terms of strengthening devolution. And strengthening not just in one side, the executive side, which usually gets all the accolades and the space, is also the legislative side that actually oversights the executive. So a lot has been done towards the executive. The discussions have always been about executive, even the fight of impeachments, as you're saying, are all based on the executive. Very little has been done, systemic, right, even from the Constitution, to strengthen. Right from the word go, there was the thinking around Council of Governors. There was the thinking about intergovernmental relations, bringing the 47 county executives together.
Yeah.
There has never been a conversation about bringing the assemblies together. And so County Assemblies Forum, through rudimentary ways, we're trying to bring ourselves together to address issues that are national and community in nature. So right from the Constitution to the practice. From the design.
It's devolution focused more on the executive.
Yes.
And little attention was given to the legislative arm of devolution.
Yes.
Like you've said. So there's a Council of Governors, which is recognized.
Yes.
There's a Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee, which is recognized. There's a Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, which is recognized. There's the Devolution Summit, which brings in the presidency and the governors, which is recognized.
What about that one where the deputy president chairs?
IBEC.
That's economic.
The Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council brings governors and the deputy president and the National Treasury and the CRA and all this recognized. Where do legislators come in?
Feature, and that has been the problem. Although, if you look at the Constitution, right from Article 2-3, it talks about all sovereign power being directly exercised, and then, of course, indirectly through democratically elected representatives. Goes further to say the representatives at the national level legislators and then county level, and then it goes to say about the executive, and then further down, I think at 4, it talks about government is going to be done at the national and the county level. So the Constitution gives us that leeway, but when it comes to the actual practice, very little has been done in that direction. And then again, even the way we got there are 1450 wards in the country. There was a formula that got us to 1450. Again, because of the Constitution, it talks about a third gender rule. Because of the nature of politics in Kenya, we have like about 800 gender top-ups, so that we get to our numbers to 2,237 or thereabout. And so now when we now have a conversation, you look like you guys are just too many and you are looking at things wrong. And it's a design. We're not the ones. I mean, if National Assembly was allowed to do the gender top-up, it will not be at the 349. It will spiral to maybe 500. Yeah, so the structure, as I said, is designed to not function in that regard. Then secondly, when it comes to the institutions that are supposed to strengthen, like the CRA, Commission of Revenue Allocation, of course, the teething problems that happened in 2013 forced them to now bring things like ceilings. So a county assembly is supposed to operate within a given ceiling framework that is set up by the CRA, which in actual sense is the way it is made to work is not to the best. It's not out to bring the devolution's best in the assemblies. So that a county like Nairobi, for the last 10 years, our ceilings have been revolving around 1.3 billion. That is everything that you see, all the madness, everything, the trips, all those things that people say, plus the good things. Out of a budget of 39 billion that the whole county budget is. If you have a 39 billion budget, a development budget of Nairobi, for example, of course is 30%, which is 13 billion. Yep. Then if you give the assemblies now to watch over and ensure work is done for Mwananchi, you give them 10% of the development budget. And then they're supposed to employ, they're supposed to get technical support, they're supposed to employ other wards, and also do all these other functions that are supposed to give checks to the executive is wrong. And then, of course, the cost of living, inflation and everything, and it has flatly remained rather the same. So that now you have a speaker who is the highest ranking member in the county assembly, given like 3 key positions that he has to employ. That's a gardener, a cook and a driver. He's supposed to check the governor, who has a cabinet
and advisors
and numerous advisors and chief officers and all everything that is supposed to strengthen the side of the executive. When you mirror it to the assembly side, is skewed disadvantageous.
But wait, Chege.
Yes.
Okay. If we want us to compare,
yes.
So the governor has CECMs,
yes,
and has
chief officers
and directors
advisors
of the departments.
Yes.
Speaker has clerks, right? And the people who work in the clerk's office. Are those now the equivalent of the structure?
There's a clerk, number one, is one. The AIE holder, who now has assistant clerks, who now work in the committees. And working in the committees is a whole lot of a job.
So that sounds to me like that's clerk would be like the CEC.
He's a CEO.
And then
right?
the CEO and then the directors.
Yeah. So it's a very different comparison because a CEC is a policy maker who has a whole team behind them to be able to deliver.
He has essentially as a ministry.
He's a minister. Essentially, we actually call them ministers. So that design from that top level is trickled down. Now, when it comes to a member like the member from Ngara, you are given opportunity to hire 3 staff, and on X amount of I think it's 58,000 or thereabout for the 3.
Total of 15,000 for the 3.
58.
Oh, 58.
For the 3. Okay. You get so if you look at what's the best you can be able to get, so that you're able to decipher the documents I was showing you and everything, we are shortchanged.
Okay.
If you look at the support National Assembly is given for the legislators at that level, both senators, MPs and women reps, is enormous. If you look at their budget for their local offices, is way above. So you are strengthened to be able to do your job. If you look at our leadership offices, like the leader of majority of any given county, vis-a-vis a leader of majority at the Senate or the county and the National Assembly, you go to Aaron Cheriot's office, my friend, he has like 5 guys before you get to the office.
Spirit.
He has a legal researcher, he has a fiscal analyst, he has, So when he now talks, of course, he's a leader of majority. Our guy is a key and a small office.
Sure.
The leader of majority in the county assembly.
It's been real.
Based on what you're saying, so if you look at it layered, it is clear that there's an understanding that somebody who has a position, who's supposed to do 1, 2, 3, it is clear what their needs are in order to have that done. And if we look at devolution and you try to break it apart, we're essentially saying that bringing governance to the people, that's what it is, more or less.
Yes.
Bringing governance to the people, and those who have been put in a position of representation by way of the vote, they're not, or they have not been given the tools that they need to actually have this done. So in its design, it is flawed. Are you saying that even with agitation, then, it is difficult or impossible to have this design re-engineered?
Even with, what agitation, as you're saying, is you're already disenfranchised, even to the people you're talking about. I'll give you one good example. When the president wrote a memorandum to the two speakers, requesting for a change or a look at the constitution, he said after the CDF was declared null and void with the Supreme Court, he asked for the CDF, National Affirmative Action Fund for Women. The other one was Senate Oversight Fund, and of course, the raft of things that he was asking for. But there's how do you forget to talk about World Development Fund? And we are talking about the already devolved structures. How come there is no fund to look at those, issues that are happening because it's already a devolved function? And then how do you address those issues? So we now start from there.
So that means all these things that you've talked about now, and I can see the frustration in your face. All these things that you talk about, then negate the very first thing that you said when you said that devolution is working well.
If you look at it wholesomely, and if you look at the maybe the crown jewel of the whole constitution was, the biggest price was devolution. So to that extent, yes, it
delivered. At least deliver the baby. Okay. Now, in terms of the care of the baby and all of those things,
exactly. So that's where you're having a problem. And I said, on the executive side, you might feel that it's working. We have something. On the oversight, function of the legislative side is when you have big hiccups and issues that need to be looked at. And once they are looked at or progressively been looked at, then I think I will be back to.
How many years have we had devolution?
10.
Okay. And at what point do you think that these matters will actually be looked at?
You see, number one, we need this conversation. Now that you're saying 10 years, somebody or a body needs also to, evaluate.
Let me ask you the question.
What has happened in the last 10 years?
We had the chairman of the CIC.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
One Justice Charles Chege. And we had the same conversation with him. We had been of the opinion before he came here that there are two bodies at the onset of our devolved units of our 2010 constitution that were shortchanged. They were given too short a time to do a task that actually requires probably more than 10 years.
Yeah.
They were given 5 years.
Yeah.
So the very discussions that we're having are the discussions that could have been held if the transition authority was still in place. Because transition isn't we have gotten we have promulgated. That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Transition is how you move along with this constitution, not over even 5 or 3 years, but over a period of time that gives you the impression of how these things actually work. So the moment those two commissions came to an end,
abruptly,
it meant that this discussion we're having was going to remain a discussion. But let's leave that aside and ask now, within the constitution as we have it, and within the powers that are just within what exists, the powers that are granted to our members of the county assembly, is there any way in which you can either legislate or see to it that all these things that you do not get from the national government, because it's meant from the national government, are actually gotten through own source revenue?
Thank you. First of all, I agree with you. TA was rushed, and did also have capacity issues of the commissioners and the overall mandate and how it was rolling down. Now, in terms of where we are and if there is something we can do, number one, Article 96 talks about the role of the Senate. I think maybe Senate needs to rejig and look at the mandate properly and see because these are the key holders. So one, in terms of legislation at the national level, Senate should be the one taking charge. At the executive level, there's a State Department of Devolution, headed by none other than is a State Department under the Deputy President, because devolution was given to his side. The State Department needs to also come up and say, in every given year, these are the milestones that we need to achieve to be able to get to where we are. Finally, the IGRTC, Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee. They actually have presented a bill in Senate requesting for the entrenchment of the Council of Governors into law.
Yep.
But it has, for some reason, forgotten that there's a county assemblies forum or the other end. So that kind of,
skew in thinking.
Yes.
Oh, no. It's not skewed. It's very deliberate.
It's a deliberate, amnesia and all that.
No.
So,
Senate making laws when the bulk of people in the Senate want to be governors. Do you really think they are going to agree to have a law that when they are governors, you actually have MCAs who are empowered to give them hell? I don't think so.
And that's where there lies the problem. What's the point of
some of these senators are former MCAs?
Yes, they are.
And it's all about the thinking generally, because you can say right now you're short-sighted, you're thinking I want to be the governor next, so I don't want to do this. But you've come from being an MCA, you have had that lived experience, you know the power that you have, you don't have, you know the influence that you'd like to have that you don't have, the facilitation that you have, you don't have. Because I'm listening to Chege Mwaura, I was just writing down the role of the county assembly is similar to the role of the National Assembly,
Yes.
right? Legislation, oversight, and representation.
Same.
So if you think about legislation, what capacity does a county assembly need to be able to effectively come up with legislation and pass laws? You need technical assistance. You need people who are able to draft bills. Do you have those? Do you have an office where you have expertise in bill drafters, in researchers and such?
We do have, but it's because again of the issue of the ceilings. It's greatly
It's hampered.
It's hampered because
How many officers does the Nairobi County Assembly have?
Nairobi and is one of the big. It's actually the biggest.
The biggest
assembly.
county
Has
assembly.
less than 5.
Less than
guys
5.
in the legal department. Personally, there's an amendment bill I'm bringing for Persons with Disabilities Act of 2015. I am proposing some amendments to the bill. It's been lying there since early this year. So
Why?
Because of capacity problems. We do not have
Because there are
drafters.
only 5 people and their tables are full.
Yes.
They are the legal department.
That's
So
the
they deal
legal
with
department.
everything else within the county.
Yes.
The issue of drafting is just one of the many issues they have to deal
Yes.
with. Okay.
Capacity issues as well. Representation obviously means that you need to have people of Ngara to reach you.
Yes.
So they can tell you.
Yes.
So do you have an office?
I do have an office.
Who sits in the office?
Actually, I have 2 offices because Ngara used to be east and west. So over me, I have 10 guys because I actually acknowledge the need, and I've put up some younger people to help me work through things because you're not able to, juggle all these things, ground things, and politics is as local as it can be.
Yes.
If people don't see you in, issues of bread and butter,
Then you're not
visibility.
takataka,
Yes.
lights, roads,
Maji.
matanga, maji, and then also now being there to formally hear them, bursaries and all that, then you're not working. Yeah, you can't just be legislating and oversighting at City Hall.
So these 10, they're supported by the county assembly.
No, I'm supported 3. 3 are the ones who are supported.
So the other 7, you're paying them yourself.
Yes.
But you need, basically, what we are saying is, for an MCA to perform this representation role properly,
Yes.
they need to have the feelers, they need to have an office, they need to have an office that is able to receive information,
Exactly.
break down the information, pass on the information to the MCA. And when matters now require, this needs a bill, this needs a motion, this needs one action or the other, you have your own technical team that does this.
Yes, and not just any technical team. What kind of quality
Expertise.
do you want at that level? I mean, if somebody, I know of my colleagues who don't have anyone who can even draft a letter, So because you just look at, first of all, you're a politician. You want to put your cronies or the people who helped you get the votes. Because how do you now bring this graduate who was not there when you're looking for votes? And now, because you also want to look very good, you brought this guy. You'll be a one-time guy. So, I'm happy that you're having this conversation, because when people hear about all these things that we clamor for, it's just about these guys just want more salaries, or they just want more parks, or they just want cozier offices. No, there's a lot of work to be done, especially if you are to give representation and proper oversight, because it's one thing to do the roads. It's another to check the quality, it's another to check timeliness, and all these are things. All these are things that we need to look at activities of the executive happening on
I'm taking you back to what I asked, the issue of on-source revenue.
Yes.
The issue of these things that require capacity here being money.
Yes.
And how it is on-source revenue can play into this or can't play into this. Because what the national government will give you is already fixed.
Yes.
On-source revenue can increase.
On-source revenue can increase, yes. But there's an issue of ceilings. It's still an executive thing. You
like
on-source
the
for
39 billion shillings budget for Nairobi is both revenue share and on-source revenue.
Yes.
That's what you pass.
Yes.
And say Nairobi this year shall spend 39 billion shillings.
Yes.
Out of that, 30% will go to devolution.
Development, yes.
Development,
yes.
13 billion shillings.
Yes.
Out of that 13 billion shillings, what percentage goes to the county assembly?
For the assembly, it's actually not about out of that. It's out of 39 billion.
It's out of 39. 10%.
Less than 10%.
1.3 billion.
Of 39 billion.
Of 39 billion goes into this.
And then this is the watchman. When I came to your good offices, there's serious security because of what you have inside here. When the conversation about counties, we have invested all this, the 39s, the development and everything. But the person you are putting to guard
is not equipped.
Is not equipped. So, and then you're expecting us to be able to work.
Actually, no. We are doing it deliberately because if you're better equipped, you will create a problem, which people don't want.
Yeah.
I was reminded of a story that appeared in the Standard in 2015 when the then governor, Evans Kidero, ordered Karangata, the Karen and Langata Residents Association, to pay their rates. They had declined to pay rates, and the reason was simple. They were not getting services, so they did not see why they should pay for services they were not getting. But it's not that they were not paying. They had taken an account and they were putting money in an account, but not the escrow account that the county had wanted. Now, when you follow the story, a point did, the matter went to court and Justice Odunga made a ruling, but what then happened was the county realized the best thing to do is let's start providing these services they're talking about. And they were not wrong, because if you drove around Karen, they were terrible roads and the roads were built, and of course the discussion was, okay, now we've sorted out these roads. They said, no, it's not just the roads. Okay, you need to sort out this, and you need to sort out this, and you need to sort out the other. But then they had the muscle to do that. Now, stories abound as to how much money accumulated in that account that they set aside for a year. Now, when stories abound, rest assured, some of them will be exaggerated. Some mention $1 billion, some mention more, whatever the amount. But it shows that they were willing to pay. It's just that they were not willing to pay for services they were not receiving. What am I saying? I am saying this. When we talk about the revenue, own source revenue in a county like Nairobi or any other county in this country, are we talking about what can realistically be realized, or are we talking about some exaggerated figure that someone comes up with to sort of like show that they're doing good work and yet the money cannot actually be realized? Or are we dealing with budgets or targets that are too low for whatever purposes, and yet the monies that can actually be realized, if, again, services were provided, then there would be reason for someone to say, actually, I see the services being provided, I have no problem paying my rates. A chicken and egg situation.
On-source revenue is a very interesting topic, because this, for me, this would be the what will catapult counties, Nairobi especially, But then again, there's a problem of how we get to that place. Number one, how do we target? And is it based on the challenges that we have? Number two, the revenue collecting system. Number three, how do we report and how do we monitor? We start from every county government in every 5 years, you come up with something called a County Integrated Development Plan, the CIDP.
Yep.
Now, if you look at that document critically, it will tell you if these guys are going to arrive at what they want or not. And then, of course, it's broken down to the annual development plans, then to the fiscal strategy papers, and then the budgets and all that. So if you do not get it right there, then you have a problem. And therein lies the problem. Because if Nairobi, for example, who are the biggest revenue earners, what are they called, approval plans under planning, for every development plan to be approved, it is our biggest earner. How now that how are we feeding that golden goose? So that it continues laying. The issues that we're having in Kileleshwe and the issues of the sporadic
uncontrolled development.
Where is it coming? Should we go for them, or how do we ensure that we get the best out of it? And then number two, issues like parking and all that. Now, on the issue of approval plans, I think I have my figures about 30 or less percent is what is titled in Nairobi. The whole of Eastlands is actually not titled.
Wow.
Now, which means you get...
repeat that, just so that
30%.
30% of Nairobi is what is titled.
Is what is titled. Now, if your biggest earner is planning department, you get your rates based on
title
deeds. So if you have an allotment paper of all those documents, you pay something called a ground rate, which is
a very small fraction.
Is like is in hundreds actually, or 1,000 shillings per year for. So it makes sense if the county government targets to title Nairobians, even if they took up their bill, because of what they're going to get immediately after. And by the way, you cannot get an approval plan without a title deed, unless, of course, you do something called a regularization process. So the best thing, number one, is to put money as much as possible to get people in the grid. So that is not done very well. Then number two, on the issues of pending bills. Pending bills is a big issue. Our biggest now I think we can even call them defaulters, national government. All the national the land that the national government has in Nairobi is enormous. Do they pay for those land rates and all that? And where is the clearinghouse, of all these kinds of things? So if you're not going to get those big ones and then now come down to parkings and all that, then you're not going to raise. Nairobi's target this time round is 19 billion.
Okay.
Our last target was 18 billion, but what was realized was 8 billion.
Okay.
Out of a target of
18.
You only raised 8 billion.
Not even half.
Yeah.
Okay. I must ask, because even as you ask these questions in terms of what's happening, own source revenue has got to be something that must be relied on.
Yes.
We cannot run away from that, because it mimics a federal system where you have central government, and then each unit then get support from the federal government, as it were, and then you then have a responsibility to keep the lights on, essentially.
Yes.
And so here we are saying that the very mechanisms that should be or ought to be set up to allow this thing to actually be done is largely failing or largely non-existent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what I hear you saying is that when we hear county bosses, and then I'm going to ask then as the assembly who sits in a position of oversight, when we hear county bosses, or when we see, people at that level running after garbage collection or running after
parking
or water meters. Essentially what we're saying is that you're running after shillings and cents, whereby the thing that can actually make you work is not happening. And then if for whatever reason the National Treasury decides that they're not releasing money to the counties, you would actually be able to run without that money. That's what we're saying.
And that's why this conversation needs to get us there. But so long as the county assemblies are in a rut of looking at subsistent issues, my salary is not enough, my tax, whatever it is that we fight about, If you have not equipped us to be able to have this conversation, we will always have this, and it will never be better.
We are constantly in that conversation because of lack of capacity at the county level,
remember
the assembly level.
Yes, the systemic issues that we are talking about. I mean, in 2015 is I think using again. I wish we came here to talk about Nairobi primarily, but I also want to talk about the national issues as far as county assemblies are concerned. But if you look at just again the final example on Nairobi, our highest earning was in 2015-16, where we got 12.1 billion, right? But you see where our targets. So whoever does these targets year in, year out, what is it that they are getting it or we are not getting?
And so are they working on a should be?
It should be.
Those are the questions
an
when they are brought to the assembly for you to approve a budget. Those are the questions that you should be asking.
Yes.
Now, what do you need in order to ask the right question?
The capacity. You strengthen the capacity of the assemblies to be able to have a detailed conversation and be able to have the muscle to tell the executive, no, I think this is not realistic, we can do it. But then again, the way it's set up, why don't I fight for another road in Ngara or my dispensary to be done, I don't know what, so that now I'm sorted.
So you're dealing with a small basic issue.
Yes, and that's unless the small basics are sorted out for the assemblies. And that's a conversation when it comes to remuneration and all. That's where it should be going. Not the usual of they want this money to do what. But it's for strengthening and the oversightal role of the assemblies and for the posterity of devolution.
Okay.
Mheshimiwa, itemized strengthening for me, so that I understand. If they do this, and this, and this, and this,
yes,
then we'll be adequately strengthened.
Number one, technical assistance. Yeah, we need to be able to have staff both at the county assemblies, the head offices, and also at the local level. Number one, and then number two, the remuneration. If you look at Article 230 of the Constitution, talks about SRC and how they need to look at. One of the areas they need to look into is to be able to attract and retain good people to come to work for these things.
It's called human resource.
That human resource, both elective and also the ones at our secretariat. So if you are able to remunerate better, then again, you'll be able to attract the right kind of people to come for these positions. And now you are able to have this kind of conversation now. So that is also another area that we feel it's a disservice. Yeah.
Then that takes us to, we saw an MCA speaking in Machakos the other day, addressing the president. Of course, there were people who started booing her and all. But taking down some of the things that she raised. Number one, she talked about reviewing of MCA salaries, and then reinstatement of plenary allowance, and then thinking of the ward fund, mileage and interest. There was the issue of a double taxation of car reimbursement, pension for MCAs who have served for more than one term, and so on and so forth. Why are these issues important? Because when the public hears this, they think, my MCA, ukitafuta kazi huko unajua ni pesa ngapi unalipwa.
Yeah. If you're well remunerated, when I came into the county, we started on a different figure. Which was 123 then.
123 basic salary.
Basic. Now the basic.
Basic is which one? The one before tax or the one after tax?
Before.
Oh, okay.
Then it went down to 86. Now it's 86.
It went down.
Yes.
Sorry, what?
I have my payslip here. I can show you so that I don't look like
Mbupatia ndutu wana.
Wewe mazacha kuangalia hizi vitu. Mheshimiwa anaanza kuitisha rambe.
So it started at 126 and went down.
Yes.
And the reason?
The reason is how they compute. Look at the current basic. So in our conversations with SRC, I don't get it 10 years after inflation and all those things compounded, you're bringing us down. Right? That number one is basic. So, and then you now put in a bit of house allowance there, I don't know, transport, so that now you get to a figure that gets to you 244, and then now you say, now that's good.
So 144 now is the basic plus allowances.
There's a basic
plus everything.
No, plus allowances. Plus. Plus the, now what, you see, if you want to get a loan, what do they look at? They look at your basic.
Yeah.
That's what they look at.
If you now have other allowances that are going to come for the committee, for example,
Yeah.
that becomes is looked at differently. So when we started in the last term, 2017-2022, our again ceilings, we were capped at 16 committee sittings. There were 16 and plenary 16. So now they remove the plenary. So you're left with 16.
So no plenary allowance.
So no plenary
And how
allowance.
much?
But why do you need a
get per-
plenary
How much
plenary
do you
allowance?
get per sitting? Let's be
3,000.
3,000.
Yes.
And plenary, what is the Azari cost?
It was still the same.
But what is it necessary for?
It is necessary because it's plenary where things are passed, where the actual, legislation.
Essentially, that's where all of you are in.
That's where all
and
of-
so
yes.
if
That's where-
a vote is to be taken, you could say the whole
Exactly.
assembly was involved.
Yes. So the fight that you're fighting in Senate about the money that was supposed to go to the counties and whatever was passed at plenary. So you raise your numbers, you don't have your numbers, you are cooked.
Yeah.
So with the committee sittings, an normal average MCA has like about 4 committees. And every committee realistically can have about 2 sittings in a week, right?
So 8.
8. So in a month, it's 32.
Yeah.
But payable 16. So why should I go for the
For all
other?
32.
Yeah. So somebody like me, I chair Public Accounts Committee in Nairobi. By itself, we can do about 4 committee sittings in a week because of the workload.
Yeah.
So why would I ever go to water and health and this? Because I was paying. So maybe my expertise of having been there for a while and understanding a few things, who's losing? Is the Kenyan people.
Yeah.
You see. So that conversation needs not to look like it's this guy who wants this. It's also what you're also being able to, because other than that, now you go and do your own side hustles away from whatever, because you have your own needs. So again, so plenary sittings in Nairobi, if you look, Google, you'll see the stories around Nairobi is we are having issues raising quorum. Yeah, because people think, that's plenary.
You have MCAs who live in Nairobi who ought to be coming to Nairobi up or down, up or City Hall for meetings, but they're not.
Yeah. So
Because they're busy hustling.
And then now when you talk to you Kenyans and say, no, but why should he be paid to do his work?
Yeah.
It's the way it's computed is to also, one, raise quorum, two, to be able to have very robust conversations around it. So all you need, anytime you feel it must be a very big issue, like the other day in Nairobi, we 700 people were kicked out. You remember? 700 staff of the executive. The Nairobi County Assembly passed that they should not be renewed because they were out of contract, and it is now a matter in the Senate. So what I'm saying is that the conversation around a plenary is not a joke. But then if you now equate it to, it's a job. In the National Assembly, they're not capped. So when you remove their plenary...
They're not capped?
They're not capped. You see,
So they can meet as often as they like.
So there's a sitting allowance for committee and plenary at the National Assembly.
No. At the national, what SRC did removed plenary for everyone.
For everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is okay if, again, at least the committee where the
Don't cap the committee.
the work, a lot of work is done before it comes to plenary is done. Comes in, it is capped. So it hampers. And the people who miss out, unfortunately, are the Kenyan people. If we are talking about education or health, all these other things, and these people are not able to get the best out of the people they elected, then the biggest loser, and I usually say this, of the 2,000 plus members, if they have kids, their kids are in slightly a better institution.
Sure.
I mean, granted. So when you're talking about the ECDs that we're supposed to be working on, and actually not for these people. It's for the common Mwananchi that they represent. So if the conversation is not very healthy and is also not going in the right direction, what do? They say, you can do whatever it is you want with that ECD money. Me, I'll be sorted out. So it has forced members to become now deal makers, go to the executive, all those things.
They're looking at other things. Mheshimiwa, if this were to work the way you at County Assemblies Forum, for example, has envisioned, what's the minimum that an MCA should be taking home?
What we did as County Assemblies Forum, we engaged a consultant to do another job description, because the job description, as per the County Governments Act, is actually one article. Article 9, that says the work of the... So if you just take it whole, just like that, you will actually think these guys do nothing. But now if you now compute and now look into the detailed work of the MCAs, like what we're talking
with
about,
the Vituko ground,
revenue, raising budgets, all these things, looking at oversight and all those things, and you quantify them, then the discussion becomes very different. That's what we did. So we've done a different job description, and then requested the SRC for a review of their earlier circular. Then number two, we are asking for a re-evaluation, and at the re-evaluation, we are looking at a scale as opposed to the amount. Because you say amount, it looks like, why this amount? But look at it at the scale of where a normal, this kind of work would be happening at the national level, and we put it at E2 or E3 for an ordinary member, and then of course higher ups for the leaders or the
ordinary member. How much?
E2 is an E2. So E2 is what? Maybe double that.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah. So that we start from there.
So about 160 as basic.
As you know, it's the scaling is it starts and ends. You know, it's like 160 to 200 and I don't know what, like that. So that now you're able to have that conversation.
So the lowest MCA.
The lowest MCA should be having a conversation. There's after we are actually at D4. There's a D5, there's E1, and there's E2. I think it's about the current deputy speaker is at maybe 216.
So you want to start at 216
as a basic, and then move from there.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah,
it does.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mheshimiwa Chege,
yes.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is a conversation that we ought to keep having so that all of us can then align on what you're talking about. Chege Mwaura is the MCA for Ngara Ward, but he's also the Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum, having served in the Nairobi City County Assembly for now 3rd consecutive term.